working long hours and enduring great personal sacrifices was the key to success, I'd be wealthier than Richard Branson, Tony Hawk, and Donald Trump. Because I know I work longer hours. I know that I play less golf than Trump. I know that I frolic on the beach a lot less than Branson. And I know I spend less time with kids, friends, family, and my personal hobbies than Tony Hawk. Yet, in a world of 24/7, 365, these guys are kicking my butt. They are producing far greater results, they're having a far greater impact on the world, and they are enjoying the non-work joys of life far greater than I am. And I have to confess, this pisses me off. Because we all started out about the same, even a couple of these guys behind the starting line. Richard Branson had dyslexia, selling newspapers. Tony Hawk, crazy outcast skateboarder dude. Yet these guys are producing these incredible results. Now, for me, I think I figured out a little bit of the dilemma, and that's what I want to share with you here. You see, if you read The Compound Effect, I was raised by a university football coach, single dad, and the way that you got love and an attaboy in our family was to achieve. If you did well in school and you got good grades, you got to go to the ice cream parlor to celebrate. If you didn't get good grades, you had to stay home. In Little League, if you hit home runs, you got a chance to go to the pizza parlor to celebrate. If you collected a day of strikeouts, it was a long, quiet, lonely, straight car ride home. And so as a result, as I look back at this upbringing, I think that's why I became an achievement addict. It's more commonly known as an overachiever. And all my life I've been an overachiever. And I've wore it as a badge of honor. I was always proud that I could outwork, out-persist, out-consist anybody under the table or under the desk. But I have come to learn that there is a massive difference between being an overachiever and being a superachiever. And that's the difference between me and Branson and Trump and Hawk, and probably the difference between you and those three and many others that are producing the kind of results you're looking for in your business and in your life as well. So, how many people here are already, before you start applying new goals and new tasks and new priorities, are already overworked, overscheduled, and a bit overwhelmed, but you are dissatisfied with the results you're getting in life? How many people here? Okay. So, the strategies I'm going to talk about in this presentation are for you if you want to go from being an overwhelmed, overstressed, overachiever to becoming a superachiever that produces stunning results in less time, with less effort, with a lot less stress, so that you have more time to spend in your personal hobbies and more time to spend with your family. And that's what I want to talk about. So there are three distinctions between these superachievers and how maybe the rest of us are going out and trying to produce in the world. How to get big results in less time. So the first distinction is this. And this is a really interesting twist of understanding. What these superachievers have created, the reason for it is not because of what they did. Superachievement has very little to do with what you do, and in fact, more to do with what you don't do. And this is an incredible distinction to understand. When you're looking to try to figure out what is it that I need to do in order to create more results in less time, it will come down to the fact that you probably need to not do a lot of things so that you could focus on what to do that is the right thing. Let me give you an example. It's easy to say yes. See, yes is easy. Any average person can say yes. A knock at the door. Do you have a minute? Yes. Phone call rings. Can you take a call? Yes. Can you come to this meeting? Can you, yes to the chocolate cake, yes to another drink, yes to going out to happy hour, yes to this particular obligation or distraction. Yes is easy. Yes doesn't require any courage. The master skill found in the superachievers are your ability to say no. No is the primary response of the superachiever when it comes to obligating their time, their attention, and their bandwidth. Interesting, when we had a chance to spend some time with Warren Buffett, and you ask him the question, what is the #1 key to your success? Now, this is a guy who's worth $50 billion. And he's asked in all his stockholder meetings, he's asked by the media and the press, and he finally had to think about, what is the one answer I would give to this question every single time? Do you want to know what the #1 key to success is for a person worth $50 billion? Here's what it is when asked. For every 100 great opportunities that are brought to me, I say no 99 times. Of all the things that would be the key to his success, he said it was saying no 99 times out of 100. When we had a chance to feature Steve Jobs on the cover of Success magazine, and this is the guy who has built now what is considered the world's most valuable brand. And so we asked the question, what are you most proud of that you and Apple have built? You want to know what his answer was? I am as proud of what we don't do as I am of what we do. Interesting, isn't it? This was an interview that was done with the new CEO of Nike, and it was an interview between the editor of Fast Company and he relates a story about when he first took the job, he got some advice from Steve Jobs about how to do his job and how to build a better company. I want to play that interview for you here real quick.
You mentioned last night when we were having dinner that when you first got the job as CEO, you got a call from Steve Jobs and he offered you some advice.
Well, he didn't call to offer me advice, but we had worked together on a Nike-Apple collaboration called Nike Plus. So we took what Apple knows, what Nike knows, and brought a new technology to the market. Anyway, long story short, he said, "Hey, congratulations, it's great, you're going to do a great job." I said, "Well, do you have any advice?" And he said, "No, you're great." And then there was a pause, and he goes, "Well, I do have some advice." He goes, "Nike makes some of the best product in the world. I mean, product that you lust after, absolutely beautiful, stunning product. But you also make a lot of crap." He said, "Just get rid of the crappy stuff and focus on the good stuff." And then I expected a little pause and a laugh, but there was a pause but no laugh at the end. Yeah. And he was absolutely right. And in fact, that's one of my major focal points in terms of my priorities as a CEO and even as a designer when I was growing up at the company, is to edit. I mean, we have so many ideas. Nike is an idea factory.
So I ask you the question, what crappy stuff are you doing throughout the day that you need to focus on stop doing so that you can start doing the good stuff? When we had a chance to spend some time with Kenneth Cole, this was his quote, and I think this sums it up best. Success has less to do with what we can get ourselves to do and more to do with keeping ourselves from doing what we shouldn't. That's the great temptation restraint. Peter Drucker, one of the great management gurus of all time, puts it this way: there's nothing so useless as doing efficiently that which should be not done at all. So I ask you to consider this, because I want this to be a working session. I don't want you to just listen for entertainment. I wanted you actually to do some introspection and make some changes that will see results in your life. And so if you look back at your calendar last week, just write this down and consider doing this later. What should you have said no to? What took your time, energy, and focus but did not produce the desired results you were looking for? The other thing to consider is, when you look at your calendar next week, what should you now start saying no to and cancel and delete? And then lastly, when you look at your idea list and your project list and your commitment list and all the communications that you've opened yourself up to, which do you need to start saying no to. So, you probably ask the question, if we say no to all these things, what do we then actually need to do? Let's talk about that next, because that's distinction number 2. The answer is, it's not doing more. When you consider all that you're doing right now, if I asked you to spend another 2 or 3 hours a day doing the most valuable priority activities that you can to build your business, you go, I don't have 2 or 3 hours a day. It's impossible for me to do more. I'm already overwhelmed and overstressed. And when you look at the super achievers, it's not their ability to do more, crank through the night, burn the midnight oil. More is not the answer. Fewer is. Fewer activities is the answer. Super achievers learn to focus on what I call the vital few. And that's what I'm going to go with you. When you boil it all down, it's better to be world class at a few things than it is to be mediocre at many things. And if you look at the greatest achievers of our time, whether they are great athletes or they are great entertainers or they are big super business tycoons, the one thing, or even great inventors or geniuses, they are genius at a few things. And in the rest of their life, they can actually be a little out of sorts. And so what you want to find out is, where can you become world class at a few things? And those few things are going to make a name for yourself. Because we know the names of these entertainers, athletes, and business tycoons because they have become world class at a few things. And they didn't worry about mastering the mediocre. So there's a huge difference, and this is what I have to struggle with every single day. There's a big difference between long work, working long hours, and hard work. Here's the difference. Long work is answering email, responding to all the incoming inputs that are coming at you, phone calls, texts, trolling on Facebook, right? Talking to your whining, bitching, moaning representatives. That requires long work. Here's what hard work is. Calling that big kahuna prospect that you've been afraid to call. That's hard. Following up on your prospects that you've got in the pipeline, but you're afraid to get their answer. That's hard work. Going on, doing three-way calls, getting people on conference calls. That's the hard work. Measuring your results, doing the introspection about how to improve yourself. That's the hard work. So it's not about long work hours, it's about hard work hours. So the key to this is to understand your vital signs of strategic priority. It's just like if you go into the hospital, and it doesn't matter whether you go in with a headache, or you go in with head trauma, or you lose a limb. The first thing they do is figure out what your vital signs are, right? Body temperature, heart rate, blood pressure, and respiratory rate. No matter what's going on, they first need to get a baseline of your vital signs. Well, there are vital signs in your business that no matter what's going on, the crazy number of things that are coming at you, you still have to be monitoring your vital signs, because that is what sustains life and growth in your business. Let's go through it. There are two critical vital signs. One is your vital few functions. The half dozen functions that matter the most of what you do that makes money in your business. And there are not 5,000 functions. This is the great news. You don't need to master 5,000 different functions in order to be successful. In any endeavor, there are only about a half dozen. And it really doesn't matter what the endeavor. My dad, who's the university football coach, is here with us this morning, and you ask him, in football, the whole process comes down to about a half dozen fundamentals. Basketball, about a half dozen fundamentals. Accounting, half dozen fundamentals. My wife's brother is a rocket scientist. I was having a conversation with him, and he said, it all comes down to about a half dozen fundamentals. Computer programming, half dozen. Parenting, marriage, leadership, sales. There are only about a half dozen functions that matter the most. When Vince Lombardi was coaching and his team won the Super Bowl, world champions, First day of practice, after being world champions, the whole world is giving them accolades. These people know how to play the game better than anybody in the world. He started off the first practice by holding out a pigskin and saying, "Gentlemen, this is a football. I know you think you are world champions, but in order to become a world champion again, it's going to require you to go right back to the basics. This is a football." One of the greatest coaches of all time, of any sport, John Wooden, 12 seasons, 10 NCAA championships in a row. And after every championship season, first day of practice, he would have an hour-and-a-half seminar on how to put on your shoes and socks and tie your shoes. And they would put them on, take them off, and put them on and take them off for an hour and a half. And he said, if you don't learn how to put your socks and shoes on correctly, I don't care how talented you are out on the court, if you get a blister or a sore, you're done for. But the other key point he was making is, it all comes right back down to the very basic functions. When I interviewed Dr. Oz, a tremendous guy, and I'm so amazed by what he gets done in life. I mean, the guy does 100 open heart surgeries. He has his own Emmy Award-winning TV show. He's a best-selling author, and he's written 400 scholarly publications. And he's in most every publication there is out there, including as a columnist for Success Magazine. And I said, how do you get it all done? And he said, look, when I go into open heart surgery, he says, I don't try to do it all. I don't clean the floors and put the equipment together. He says, even when the person comes in, I don't even open up the cavity. I don't scrub the utensils. He said, there's only about a half dozen things that I do. And that's all I focus on. That's the only thing I'm thinking about are those half dozen things. And then when I do those things, I leave the room and everybody else finishes it up. And he said, it's that way in everything I do. On the TV show, I don't try to do it all. There's a half dozen things that I got to be excellent at. When I write a book, when I approach a new article, half dozen things that I need to do. Let me give you an example. When I was in real estate, back when I was 20 years of age, there are a lot of things that you could be doing in the real estate business that you could excuse as being productive. Let me just show you a few of them here. I mean, these are legitimate, if I could read this. Sending disclosures, verifying property reports, getting permit from the city, meeting with the selling property, inspecting, signing of closing papers, dropping off keys, sending thank you gifts, prospect, show property, go on broker tour. All these things are legitimate functions of doing the real estate business. And this is where a lot of real estate agents get confused that they're actually being productive when they are only being active, when they are moving but they are not producing. There are only 3 things, I concluded, that actually make you money as a real estate agent in that industry. There are only 3 things that only I could do and couldn't delegate and get somebody else to do that make money. And it was pitching a listing, negotiating a contract, or prospecting so I could do more of 1 and 2. That's it. When I got clear that these were the only 3 things that really mattered to me making more money, I became kind of crazed about this concept of focusing my time in this narrow direction, to the point where I actually started wearing a stopwatch and hung it from my neck. And every time I was doing one of those 3 things, stopwatch went on, and then when I stopped, stopwatch went off. To the point where if I were cold calling, ring, 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 answer the phone, stopwatch on, talk, 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 hang up the phone, stopwatch off. If I were going door to door, walk up the driveway, answer the door, stopwatch on, close the door, stopwatch off. The first day that I did this, and I worked a 12-hour day, an exhausting day, I was so proud that I had gotten so much done that day, I looked at the stopwatch, and guess what it said? 20 minutes. 12-hour day, working my tail off, only 20 minutes of anything that actually mattered. And so this is where I became, okay, all I got to do is to climb that number. And so I went from 20 minutes, and it took several months to get it to 40 minutes, and then several more months to get it to an hour, and then I finally got it up to 2 hours. I ended up with 9 assistants taking care of all the other aspects of the business while I focused on those 3 things. Now, I tell you this to impress upon you, not to impress you, but in 90 days, 20 years of age, no business being in the real estate business, focused on this concept here, I was selling more real estate than the 20-some-odd agents in our office combined. I had more escrows and more listings than the entire office combined. And again, there's no some extraordinary secret to this process. It was focusing on the few things that mattered and continuing to stay focused over and over and over again. The second is to understand your vital few priorities. So you have your vital functions. These are the functions that matter. Now you have your priorities inside those windows of time. A year, a quarter, a week, maybe even a day. What are your vital few priorities? Interesting story, some of you have heard this. When we featured Richard Branson on the cover of Success Magazine, a client company called us and said, we really want to have Richard Branson come and speak at our conference. And we're willing to pay him $100,000 if he'll just come and speak for an hour. Will you call him on our behalf, since we had had a relationship with him, talking with him at Success? We said, sir, fine, we know his people, so we called his people. Sir Richard declined. Then they said, we'll pay him $250,000 if he'll come. We called Richard's people. Sir Richard declined. And then they said, okay, $500,000, we'll send a private jet. From the time his foot hits the ground to when it gets back in the plane, no more than an hour, $500,000. We called Sir Richard's people. Sir Richard declined. And then they said, how much money? What will it take? We called Richard's people, and they said, no amount of money would matter. Richard right now is focused on 3 strategic priorities, and that's it. That's the only thing he will allocate his time to, and speaking for a fee is not one of them. I thought, wow, that is what's called dedicated focus. No shiny object, no matter how shiny, will distract this guy from his few strategic priorities. I remember telling this to a friend of mine, and I said, Richard Branson just turned down $500,000 to come and speak for an hour. And he said, oh, I could never do that. I mean, $500,000, no way. And I quickly thought and said, that's why you're not Richard Branson. Hey, he started out like the rest of us, at the starting line, the same way the rest of us. He now has 400 companies, and he's worth $4 billion, still only will allocate his time to 3 strategic priorities at a time. Amazing. Jim Collins, who wrote Good to Great, Built to Last, he says if you have more than 3 priorities, you don't have any. Think about your own priority list. When I interviewed Joe Osteen, spending time with he and his wife in his home, I asked him, how he manages his time, how he runs this. Their church does hundreds of millions of dollars. He reaches 40 million people every single weekend. And he said, at the beginning, I got caught up in trying to do everything. I was tweaking the brochure. I was worried about the bumpers between the commercials. I was worried about the lighting. I was worried about the production. I was reading the transcripts. I was doing funerals. I was doing weddings. And he said, I stopped doing all of it. The only thing I do is the thing that I decided has the greatest impact to the entire enterprise. So from Wednesday to Saturday, he does nothing but writes his sermon and then spends the time memorizing it. And he said, I had to let go of everything else, but he says that one thing has brought us from being a small church to reaching 40 million people around the world. I thought, wow, to understand the one thing that matters the most and to really have the discipline to keep yourself focused only on that activity. So you might be asking yourself, okay, how is that possible? How can you possibly focus only on the vital few? There's all these things that need to get done. True. Let me bring in Ken Fisher. Also on the Forbes 400, net worth $1.7 billion, got something to say. He says you have to learn how to be a quitter. Now, when you first get started as an entrepreneur, he said, you're doing it all. You're doing sales, you're doing service, you're doing the accounting, you're taking out the trash. You're doing it all. He says, but what you have to learn to do is to start quitting all those things along the way. So as soon as you figure out how to get the trash done well, you need to hire somebody to do the trash. He says, once you figure out how to do sales, maybe you need to figure out somebody to do sales. He says, when you figure out how the accounting should work, then you hire somebody to do the accounting. He says, your goal is to learn over time, can't do it starting out, how to quit as many functions and activities as you possibly can. He said, so ultimately you get to the point where all I'm doing is thinking, making strategic decisions, and seeking advice from my team and leading the way. And that's the only thing I want to end up doing. So along your way, you will probably have to start out doing everything. But you want to learn how to start quitting a lot of those things along the way so you can focus on the vital few. So I want you to consider for yourself, how much time are you really focused only on the half dozen vital functions? I encourage you to time yourself. Because if you do, you will be dumbfounded by how much time you're actually spending and how little time you're actually spending on the half dozen vital few. And then the second thing is, what are your few vital priorities? Right now, if we asked you, what are your few vital priorities? Is it to build this organization? Is it to open up this marketplace? Is it to get 10 people in your pipeline? Is it to follow up on these 5 people? Right now, what are your few vital priorities? And if you don't know what they are, then it's a lost scenario for you on what it's going to take to make you more successful.